Hey, Tony here. Today we'll go over all of the films that I watched during the month of December, so stick around. So today I wanted to take time to go over all of the films that I watched during the month of December. I was able to see at least one film a day, and I was able to see some in the theater. I was also able to stream some TV series. So I'm going to be using my Letterboxd account if you'd like to follow along with me. I do have that link down below. So first up, I was able to watch Paper Moon. I did pick up the Criterion release and really enjoyed this film. I hadn't seen this film since I was a kid when it was first released. I gave it 4 stars and a heart. It's probably one of my favorite watches of the year. So if you've never seen Paper Moon, I would highly recommend you check it out. Next up, I went to the theater. I saw Wicked. Everybody was making such a big deal about it. I liked it for what it was. It was not my favorite film of the year. I gave it 2.5 stars and a heart. The heart was probably because of the production value of it, but I was not a big fan of the film. But it was enjoyable enough to sit through. So the next up, I watched Gladiator 2 in the theater. I really enjoyed it. I was able to watch Gladiator at the end of November before I went to go see Gladiator 2, and I'm very thankful that I did. I thought overall it was a really good story, a good continuation of the story. I gave it 3 stars and a heart, and definitely look forward to purchasing that one on physical media when it comes out. Okay, next up, I watched A Christmas Horror Story. This right here is an anthology of horror Christmas tales. Some of them were good, some of them were not so good. Overall, I didn't really care much for these films, so I did give it just 2 stars, no heart. I do not think that I ever cared to revisit these, but it was still something different to watch during the holidays. Similar to that, I did watch Christmas Bloody Christmas. This one was okay and fun enough. The characters were a little bit annoying to me, but it did have some really good kills. I gave that one 2 stars and no heart. Don't really care to watch the. Actually, I gave that one 1.5 stars and no heart. I don't care to revisit that one either. Okay, next up was a first time watch. I watched Trading Places on 4K. I had never seen this one before. I've always wanted to see it, but for whatever reason I never got around to doing it. But I did finally watch it. I gave it 2.5 stars and a heart. Overall, I thought it was a really good, fun film for that time period, and very happy to have that one in the collection. Okay, next up, I watched Arthur Christmas. I've had this one in the collection for a very long time, never watched it, and as you can tell, I was watching a lot of holiday films during this time period. But I gave it 2.5 stars and a heart. Overall, I thought it was a really good animated film, some really good visuals. The story was a little bit different, but overall I did enjoy that one. Okay, next up we have The Snowman. This is another one that was a first time watch. This right here is very beloved in the UK. Have never really heard of it much here in the US. But that one I gave 4 stars and a heart. It's very nice to have this one in the collection. What I really enjoyed about this animated film was the special features that were included. It really kind of went over all of the ways that people love this story in the UK. So that actually helped me enjoy it a little bit better. Okay, next up I did watch Agatha All Along, the Disney Plus series. I was familiar with Agatha based off of the WandaVision TV series, which I enjoyed. And Agatha All Along, I gave 2.5 stars and a heart. Overall, I enjoyed it for what it was. I don't think that it was a very necessary story to tell, but overall, I still enjoyed the TV series. Okay, next up, I watched Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Of course, I've seen this many, many times. I do try to watch that every December. It got 3 stars and a heart. I really enjoyed it. And then I also watched the newest Grinch story, this animated film from Illumination. I've heard so many people say that they did not like this, but I thought overall it was a pretty good story. It's a retelling of How the Grinch Stole Christmas in a bigger scale, and I gave it 3 stars and a heart. It's definitely one that I will be checking out over the holidays, probably every year. Okay, next up was another first time watch, and that was for The African Queen. I've never seen Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn in this film before. I gave this one 3 stars and a heart. Overall, the story was pretty good. It did have some slow pacing about it, but overall I did enjoy the story, and I'm very happy to have that one in the collection. Okay, next up I watched another film in the theater, and that was for Red One. I gave it 3 stars and a heart. I know a lot of people were really putting this film down, but overall I thought it was a really good holiday film. It was a different story and a very interesting story. Got a lot of action in it, and so overall I really enjoyed Red One, and hopefully we will get a physical media release for that. Okay, next up I watched Conclave. People were talking about this one also. I wanted to check it out. Overall I thought it was okay. It wasn't my favorite film of the year. I did give it 2.5 stars and a heart. This is one that I will need to revisit. It was very slow, but it really amped up toward the end. So I definitely want to check that one out again when I'm more focused on it. But I can definitely see why it would be getting all the Oscar buzz. Next up, I watched a streaming film, I believe on Netflix, and that was for Carry On. Really enjoyed this story. I thought it was very entertaining. A lot of action, a lot of anticipation of what was going to, I guess the word would be suspense. But I gave this one 2.5 stars and a heart. It is one that I will definitely want to revisit again, and I really do hope that they give this one a physical media release. Okay, next up I watched for the first time North by Northwest. For whatever reason, I never got around to watching this one, and now that we've got this really nice Steelbook release, I finally took time to watch it, and I loved it. I think it's a great Alfred Hitchcock film. I gave it 4 stars and a heart, and very happy to have that one in the collection. Next up, I watched another streaming show, and that was Cold Case: Who Killed John Benet Ramsey. I guess I was just looking for something different to watch other than a film, and I really do love documentaries. And this documentary really drew my attention because I am from the Atlanta area, and I do remember when this was going on. But overall, I thought it was a really good documentary. I gave it 3.5 stars and a heart. It really makes me think more about what had happened from what my opinions were. Okay, next up, I watched Hush. I watched the 4K release. I watched the Shush version and really loved it. I thought it was a great way of watching this film in black and white with a different audio mix that was a lot quieter. Excellent film. I'm very happy. It's probably one of my favorite releases of the year. I gave this one 3.5 stars and a heart. Very happy to have it in the collection. Okay, next up I watched another streaming documentary, and that was Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. I really enjoy Superman, the movie. That's the one I grew up on. Christopher Reeve was my Superman, and I'm very happy that they did this documentary. I thought it was very well done. I gave it 3 stars and a heart, and would definitely recommend you check it out. Okay, next up I watched the 4K release for The Hills Have Eyes. It had been a very long time since I'd seen this film. I wanted to check it out again and really enjoyed it. The Hills Have Eyes, I actually gave 2.5 stars and a heart. It was a bit, it wasn't my favorite, but it wasn't terrible. It is very dated from what I can remember, the effects and everything, but the story overall I thought was really good. So very happy to have that. Next up was probably one of the worst films that I watched during the month, and that is For Killer's Game. This right here I gave 1.5 star, no heart. I don't know, it could have been a lot better than what it was. It's a very forgettable movie. The acting wasn't great, the action wasn't great, but I do have it in the collection. Okay, next up I watched Journey to Bethlehem. This one right here is a musical based off of the birth of Christ. This one I gave 2 stars and a heart. It wasn't my favorite. I like what they did as far as telling the story, a little bit different, but not that great of a film. Okay, next up I watched Juror Number 2, another streaming film. Really enjoyed this one. I gave it 3 stars and a heart. I thought it had a really good, different take on the story, and I'm definitely looking forward to getting that one on physical media if it does get a release. Okay, next up I watched Interstellar. It had been a very long time since I'd seen Interstellar. It's such a great film. I gave it 4 stars and a heart. I forgot exactly how good it was until I rewatched it, but I really love the story. It is a long one, but definitely worth the watch. Okay, next up I watched another streaming movie called Klaus on Netflix. This is another Santa Claus story, animated, with a different kind of telling of the story. Overall, I thought it was really different and really good. I thought it had some great animation and some great voice acting, so hopefully we will actually get a physical media release for it. Okay, next up is a film that I hadn't seen in a long time, and that was Friday Night Lights. Overall, I thought it was a pretty good film. I'm not the biggest fan of the film. I did give it 2.5 stars and a heart. I think I actually enjoyed the TV series better than the movie. But I'm still happy to have this one in the collection. Okay, next up was a first time watch. I finally watched Disney's A Christmas Carol with the voice of Jim Carrey. And what they did with the animation, the computer animation on this, were that the animated characters looked similar to the voice actors, which I thought was interesting. But this right here is a very slow tale. I gave it 2 stars and a heart. The heart is because of the animation style. The story was pretty predictable. If you know Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, then you know this film. But I do like what they did with it. Okay, next up I watched Silent Night. I know a lot of people had some really bad things to say about this when it was first released. I never got around to watching it, so I finally did. I actually gave it 1 star, no heart. It wasn't the best. But overall, the story was interesting enough. It took me a while to figure out what was going on. It does kind of have a twist in the story. So I am definitely happy that I was able to watch it. Okay, next up I went to the theater and I saw Nosferatu. Overall, I thought it was really great. I think it looked great. It had some great visuals. It had great cinematography. I liked the score. The story was a little bit slow in parts, where it was a little dull. But overall, I think they did a great job with this film. I'm definitely looking forward to getting it on physical media. I gave it 3 stars and a heart. And then I also watched the 1922 version of Nosferatu. I had never seen this version. This is the Nosferatu that I always picture when I think of this character. As you can see down there at the bottom image. This right here was really good. I enjoyed it for a 1922 silent film. I thought it was really good. I gave it 2.5 stars and a heart. So happy to have seen that. Okay, and then next I watched the 1979 version. This version I actually really liked a lot. I gave it the same scores I gave the 1922 version, but overall I did like that there was sound in this one. It was in color. The story was pretty similar to the Eggers film. It did have some really slow parts in it also, but overall it's another good telling of the story. That one is called Nosferatu the Vampire from 1979. Okay, next up I watched another film in the theater called A Complete Unknown, and that is the story of Bob Dylan during a certain period of his life. So it's not a complete biopic film, but more of a biopic about his start in the music industry. And I really enjoyed it. I gave 3 stars and a heart. Definitely look forward to owning that one on physical media. Okay, next up, after seeing the Bob Dylan biopic, I wanted to revisit Walk the Line, which is from the same director. And this is the story of Johnny Cash and June Carter Cash. And it had been many years since I'd seen this one. I give it 3 stars and a heart. It's one that's definitely worth a watch. If you've never seen it, definitely check that one out. And then the last film of the month that I watched is a re-watching of The Road. It had been a long time since I'd seen this one, and I've been wanting to revisit this one. So this is the last one that I watched. If you've never seen The Road, it's another dark and gloomy story. It is a little slow paced, but definitely worth the watch. So those are all of the films that I watched during the month of December. Please leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think about the titles that I watched. And also let me know some of the titles that you were able to watch during the month of December. And give me some suggestions of what you'd like to see me watch here in the near future. But thanks for taking the time to watch this video, and we will see you next time.